Let's go ahead and start reading our new passage. This passage is titled Ole Kirk Christensen. As we are reading, we are going to stop and gist. Sometimes I will give you the gist, and other times I will ask you to try your best and come up with a gist for the section we read. Let's start. Ole Kirk Christensen. In the early 1920s, a Danish carpenter named Ole Kirk Christensen owned a woodworking shop where he produced furniture and other things from wood. Let's pause there and let's talk a little bit more about this word Danish. It says that Ole Kirk Christensen was a Danish carpenter. Now, Danish is a person from Denmark. This is where Denmark is. It's in Europe. And take a look at the map, and this is the flag of Denmark. So he is from this country, and he was a carpenter where he made furniture and other things from wood. Now let's take a look at our gist. And our gist is that Ole Kirk Christensen was a carpenter who made things from wood. Let's keep reading and learn a little bit more about Ole Kirk Christensen. Sadly, in 1924, due to the Great Depression, he had fewer customers and had to focus on smaller projects than he was used to making. He began producing miniature versions of his products to show his customers. It was these small models of ladders and ironing boards that inspired him to make toys. Now let's pause there again and let's talk about the gist. So the gist of this section, remember a gist is a short retelling of what we've read, is that Christensen started to make toys when his business started to slow down. We know his business started to slow down because of the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression was a time in the world when a lot of people were out of work or hungry or homeless because the economy wasn't working and there wasn't a lot of money in the world. So it tells us here that sadly in 1924, due to the Great Depression, he had fewer customers. And it makes sense. They didn't have a lot of money in that time. So now that we know what's happening in the world and what inspired him to make toys, let's keep reading. In 1932, Christensen began making piggy banks, cars, and other toys. He also began producing a truck that could be taken apart and reassembled. This helped him come up with the idea for interlocking plastic blocks that could be staggered to construct walls that could be used to construct walls with staggered rows and window openings. These blocks would stick together, but not so tightly that they wouldn't come apart. In the beginning, these toys were not well liked by customers because they were used to metal or wooden toys. So in this section, we read that he created interlocking plastic blocks, but people weren't used to these kinds of toys. Now here we learn that interlocking are parts that fit together so that you could push them in together, they would overlap, they wouldn't fall apart, they were fit together, and we also learned that these parts could be put back together if you had already assembled them. So people were not used to these kinds of toys. In 1958, the blocks were improved with hollow tubes in the underside of the block, which added support and created a better locking system. Eventually, Christensen's blocks, later named Legos, became a hit. Take a look at this section. We learned that Christensen improved the blocks and named them Legos. Let's go ahead and finish our passage. In the 1970s, Lego added boat and ship sets, family sets, and other figurines. This led to Lego becoming a huge success. Let's pause there, and this time I want you to try to write a gist for this section of the text. Take a look at my gist statement. I said that Legos added more sets and became successful. I hope you've enjoyed reading the passage and that you got a little bit of practice writing your own gist statements, because now we need to figure out what the gist of the whole text is. Remember, a gist is a short retelling of the text. Try your best and write a gist statement for the whole passage. Take a look at my gist statement. My statement is that Ole Kirk Christensen created a new kind of toy made out of plastic, and after many years, the plastic blocks became successful. Now that we've figured out what our gist statement of our text was, we can move on and try to figure out the main idea. Remember, yesterday we said that it's important to find the main idea because in our IA or in our Real Star test, we might see some questions where it's super important to have the main idea because the answer choice is based on your main idea. And since our passage is fresh in our minds, now is the perfect time to find it. Remember, there are 3 steps when we find the main idea. Step 1 is to know your topic. So what is it mostly about? Are we learning about someone or something? We're then going to do step 2. We're going to look for clues. What ideas are being talked about? We have to find things that are being repeated, photos that are being repeated, images, illustrations, things that we see being talked about over and over. And in step 3, we're going to put it all together and we are going to say, what does the author want to teach us about the topic? So in step 1, we need to find out, are we learning about someone or something? We are learning about someone, you are right. But who are we learning about? We are learning about Ole Kirk Christensen. So now that we know we are learning about someone, we need to figure out what kind of ideas does the author tell us about over and over that we need to learn. Take a look at this first part of the text. I found already some things that were being repeated over and over again. I saw the words produced, making, make, making. So here we're learning that he's producing furniture. He's making furniture and other things from wood. We also see here that he's used to making smaller projects. He makes toys. He made piggy banks, cars, and other toys. So one idea that's being repeated here is that he makes things. Now let's see if there's other ideas. I see he's talking about the author's talking about piggy banks and cars and toys. We're also seeing trucks and the word metal and wooden toys, toys. It looks like another idea here is toys. We're talking a lot about toys. We also see here Legos, boat and ship sets, Legos, even the picture, the photograph here is a picture of a toy, of a Lego. So some of our ideas that are being repeated are making and toys. And we also know from step 1 that we are learning about Ole Kirk Christensen. So now we can move on to step 3. What is the author trying to teach you about the topic? Is it A, Ole Kirk Christensen is Danish? B, Ole Kirk Christensen likes to make things? C, Ole Kirk Christensen stopped making furniture to make toys and improved it until they eventually became a hit? Or D, Legos were always very popular? The author is trying to teach us that Ole Kirk Christensen stopped making furniture to make toys and improved it until they eventually became a hit. And what were those toys called? Those toys were called Legos. You are right.